r/malicious compliance HOA tried to punish us, told us to stop them if we can. Malicious compliance cost them 16% of the annual HOA income, and the cameras are still installed today. LOC. This happened several years ago, and is a multi-year long story. I'll keep it as succinct as possible. We installed cameras in front of our home that were looking at our vehicles. Part of the camera angles did overlook parts of two neighbors' properties, one backyard and one side yard. The cameras were battery operated and had a function where you could gray out areas that you didn't want to film. When motion occurred in the grayed out areas, the cameras would not be activated to film. The neighbor's entire properties and several bushes on our property were grayed out. We did this when installing them. One of the neighbors was a friend, and had no issues with this whatsoever. We showed her the camera angle, and she said she didn't care whether or not we grayed out that area. We still left it grayed out over battery life concerns. The other neighbor's name was Karen. Not really, but we all know why I chose that name. Karen was on the HOA board and, as you can imagine, we didn't get along with Karen or the HOA board. We told Karen about the camera and showed her the grayed out areas at the same time that we told our friendly neighbor about it. It was simply an FYI conversation. We are not on friendly terms, not an asking permission conversation. She told us to take the cameras down immediately or we would regret it. About a week after we hung the camera up, we got a notice from our HOA that we were violating the bylaws. The bylaw in question? A nuisance to your neighbor's bylaw. There wasn't a specific bylaw preventing placement of cameras, so this is all they could find to try to punish us. We responded with a letter detailing how we were not violating any bylaws or laws in general, and asked them to cease and desist. We all know how these stories go though. They did not cease. And they did not desist. Their first response? The HOA has the right to enforce these bylaws. Try to stop us, if you think you can. These types of responses were, unfortunately, quite common from this board. We entered this battle with one goal in mind, to cost them as much money and time as possible. The HOA hired a lawyer specifically to fight us. To my knowledge, this has not happened to any other residents. In the following 4 months we ended up costing the HOA over $4,000 in lawyers' fees fighting this battle. For reference, the entire HOA income was $25,000/year. When it came time for our official HOA hearing over the matter, we had successfully postponed it, thanks to an attorney friend, 3 separate times. There were over 100 back and forth emails with the HOA attorney and ourselves. Each one of those emails was a 15-minute expense for the HOA. And I was happy to follow up a follow-up question with another follow-up question if it meant the HOA attorney was going to keep billing them. Did I say follow up enough times? We didn't actually want to take this battle to court, so we ended up removing the cameras the day of the hearing, to prevent being fined, even if the fine wouldn't hold up in court. The HOA decided in the hearing that we were guilty, surprise, surprise, of violating the bylaw. They couldn't fine us, as the bylaws don't allow a fine until after a hearing has been held, and the cameras were already removed. In the end, the punishment was a sternly written piece of paper on the attorney's letterhead, delivered via certified mail, that stated that we were not allowed to place a camera on our home that had the potential to invade a neighbor's privacy. Keep in mind, the letter specifically stated the camera could not be placed on our home. We left the cameras off of the home for about 4 months, until the annual HOA meeting. You should have seen the look on the HOA board's faces when I asked them to explain the $4,000 line item for attorney's fees that simply stated title searches, attorney fees. The board actually tried to hide the fact that they spent $4,000 trying to fight us over a couple of cameras by putting the fees in as title searches. Needless to say, that meeting did not go well for them. About half of them lost their positions on the board. The other half, including Karen, unfortunately, remained on the board. About a week after the annual meeting, we installed new cameras, facing the same direction as the prior cameras, only this time, we installed a post in the ground and mounted the cameras to that post. The admonishment we received after the hearing specifically stated that we were not allowed to install cameras on our home, and said nothing about putting them on a post. They did send a letter to try to tell us to remove the cameras, but a sternly worded response indicating that we were prepared to fight them actually worked this time around. I guess they didn't want to spend another $4,000 fighting us. We didn't receive any follow-up responses. And the cameras on the post are still installed to this day, over 2 years and running strong. My first paying job, and the person thought they would be clever paying me. I have always been interested in electronics and did a lot of reading and studying on my own, and I was very good at buying things at swap meets and repairing them and reselling them as a teen. My first real paying job, a friend of my mom knew a guy who ran a place that supplied answering machines to businesses. They were new tech back at that point in time. She said he was desperate for someone who could fix them as he had ones with issues spilling over the shelves. So I went to see him. It was an interesting meeting, a middle-aged businessman and me. I was 15 or so. We kind of eye each other and he asks me if I can fix them. I was pretty sure I could, and when he pulled out the service manuals for them, he had a couple that were based on the same base, I was quite sure. So he asks me what I wanted an hour, and I was used to getting $3 an hour for watching the kiddo next door on occasion, so I asked for that. He pondered that for a minute and made me an offer I could not refuse, $10, cash for each one I fix. I quickly agreed to stop by after school the next day with my tools to dig in. The next day I show up and he takes me in the back, and sure enough he has a couple big sets of industrial shelves overflowing with the things. I start pulling them off and looking at them, he gives me a smile and drifts off and leaves me to it. I quickly discovered this guy had no tech skills whatsoever. None, nada. Most of them had a brainlessly simple problem. The outgoing message was kept on a big loose loop of tape with a metallic splice at the end / beginning that went past 2 posts, and that told the thing the tape had went all the way around and to stop and turn on the cassette recorder for the incoming message. The splices and the posts got dirty and did not make good contact, and the tape would just go on forever. About 3 minutes with some alcohol and a Q-tip cleaning those parts as well as the other things in the tape path not only had them going again but sounding like new. I cleaned the front panels up with some spray cleaner and hit the wooden cases with some lemon pledge and they would look like new. I spent more time carefully coiling up the power cords than repairing them, but when I was done they looked and sounded like new. The owner came back to check on me a couple hours later to see if I was going to be able to crank one out for him that night, and I pointed to a pile of 5 or so and told him to check them out. His eyes just about popped out of his head. I got near 10 done a night for a while. It did slow down a bit once I got the easy ones knocked out, but I just kept picking the low-hanging fruit and learning more and more about them, and getting deeper and deeper into them. He also had units coming in all the time, so I did still have some easy ones mixed in with the bunch. I thought he was going to soil himself when we settled up at the end of the first week. I had spent like 3 afternoons there and got near 30 of them fixed. It was a really good payday. He was not super happy with our agreement, but he had proposed it and he had someone who was kicking ass getting them fixed, so he was cornered into honoring it. It was not lost on him that he could have been paying me like $12 a night and I would have been happy with that, but he thought he would get the better of me.